Welcome to Coach Soul, the podcast where we explore therapeutic ways to the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Steve Hudgins. I'm a licensed professional counselor dedicated to helping you navigate life's challenges. In each uplifting episode, we'll discuss mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Join me and with my co-host, Kenya Evelyn, a therapeutic life coach, where sometimes we'll even welcome special guests to our show that share their experience and expertise. So let's embark on this transformative path together and discover a healthier and happier you. All right, welcome back to part 2. Rachel, what a story. And I really appreciate the vulnerability, the courageousness that you present. How do you find that strength to be vulnerable with listeners that they can judge you and say, she was, here she is. And yeah, she's put on a fakeness about God and all that. How could you go from that to this? But you had that Damascus moment, and that's what we ended off with part 1, is this Damascus moment. And for our readers, our listeners, I should say, is that Damascus moment is referring back to where Saul was persecuting and on the road to Damascus to kill more Christians, he had that encounter with Christ that changed his life to Paul. And one of the things, if you're not a faith believer, we want to point out that if you're in substance abuse, if you have a family member that is in substance abuse, there is recovery. There is hope. It's how you approach it. So Rachel, here you are, 25. You say, okay, Mom, get out. It was a 24-hour period for you. And it's like, oh, I'm too smart. I know I don't need to go. So where did you go from there once you said, okay, Mom, I'll come back?
So unfortunately, it took me about another year before I actually got into a place. I stayed clean for about 21 days, and they were like, 21 days breaks a habit. And I'm like, bet. So I ended up doing meth on my 21st day of sobriety. And then it went on for a whole nother year. And so we started looking for places. We went to several different facilities. We ended up finding a place called Mercy Multiplied. And in that year, it got darker. It got worse. I was seeing things. I was hearing things. It was like the spiritual realm was opened up for the demonic. And I just saw it all and felt it all. And it was very, very scary. There was an element of paranoia, drug-induced paranoia. But it was more. It was more than that. I always tell people, when you fast for God, you're open up to the spiritual realm. But I was essentially fasting for the enemy because I wouldn't eat for days because I would be so high on meth. So during that time, like I said, everything just got way worse. And we eventually found Mercy Multiplied. And when we went there and toured the place, my mom was like, this is it. And I felt peace, but I didn't really understand like what that meant. But when I walked into the doors of that place, I was met by loving women who didn't care what I had done. And it was the first time where I just felt God's love. And they just loved me right where I was at. But
I want to backtrack for a second here that, a lot of people don't understand substance abuse and what it does. And you have addictions, it's having to understand what addiction is. And so you say, well, I can cut it cold turkey. And it's that easy to cut cold turkey. Sex addicts will say, well, I can cut this off from pornography, that can be done. Brock was on the show and he was able to be a success story. When you think about those type of things, when you look at substance abuse, of alcoholism, yes, there's that genetic trait that's there that often that we forget about, to share history with our family members. But we don't, like you said, we don't usually tell the why. Right. So here you are in a heavy substance, meth, and then you're using cocaine and things of that nature. What was it that you thought, oh, I can stop cold turkey, here it is, 21 days. What got you back into it again?
I went and drank. I thought, I'm just trying to stop the meth. That's all we're trying to stop at this point. I didn't realize that alcohol was part of the problem. And so I went with a friend and we drank. And then all of a sudden I was at the crack house. It's just that quick, you know? And so I even tell my clients, like, it is that serious. It is life and death. One decision leads to another. And then all of a sudden you're at the trap house and it's that quick.
So once you have a taste, it's easy to go back into it. So what would you say, I'm assuming, where are you with drinking today?
I don't drink. Yeah,
so
it's something that I feel like I could if I wanted to, but to me, it's not worth it. If on the off chance I did have a drink, I probably would hate it, honestly, because I don't like things that make me feel weird anymore. But if I had a drink and I liked it, there's a potential that it could lead back to addiction, and it's just not worth it for me.
Okay. So what do you think about when you think about that addiction? What would you tell friends or family that do drink? Do they drink around you? Do you ask them not to? You go to restaurants where drinks are being served. What's the impact on that for you?
Yeah, I'm lucky that my family doesn't really partake in that anyway. With one family member, I did have an issue at the beginning, but had a conversation and they were totally willing just to abstain around me. I'm fine if I go to a restaurant that has a bar. It's not triggering anymore, but it's just definitely something that I don't choose to be around intentionally.
So if somebody is in recovery and they're trying to stop alcoholism, I've worked with a couple to where she realized her behavior was as such that was causing things. And so finally, she stopped drinking, convinced her husband that they threw out all alcohol in the house. And they realized that by doing this, they have more fun being sober than being drunk.
Yeah.
And she's a recovering alcoholic. She's not touching alcohol anymore. And the marriage is flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you think about what would you say to someone who is married or friends that how do you deal with an alcoholic?
That's a really good question. I think it starts with having a conversation. Are they open? Do they realize it's a problem? Are they open to getting help, going to therapy, whether it's together as a couple or whether it's as an individual, just starting somewhere?
One of the things that I do in therapy is I work with fear. Mm-hmm. I believe that fear is a root to everything that diminishes our relationships with each other as a couple or just dating or just family.
Yeah.
And so when we start confronting fear, here you are in this darkness, you start up again. Surely there's fear because, oh my gosh, I got to go to therapy. They're going to mess with my mind anyways. What was it that gave you that, the inclination that, yeah, I need to try therapy because everybody thinks therapy is taboo?
Well, at the time I went to therapy in addiction, and so many crazy off the wall, out of the world things were happening to me. I needed somebody to tell me, am I crazy? Is what is going on in my life really real? And so I had a desire, and truly I had a desire to get free. I would stay up all night on my computer, super high, just typing up self-help, how to get off drugs, how to not be addicted. But really, God ended up telling my mom that the drugs are bigger than me. And so as much as I wanted to get free, I just couldn't do it on my own.
So having a sense of community kind of helps break free from that.
Yeah.
But when you think about substance abuse, those that are involved in drugs and alcohol, there's that sense of community that's there, that they're in. And part of recovery is coming out of that community.
Yeah, it's hard.
And so here you are, you're going inpatient.
Yeah, I lived there for 6 months.
What happened? What transpired in that moment for you?
You're You're actually supposed to be sober going into the program, and I wasn't. I did, I think, 5 different drugs in the 24 hours leading up to going into the doors. And so that first day that I was there, I was in heavy withdrawal. And it's a Christ-centered program. And so the counselor came to me, and I guess God had already told her, because she was like, "You're withdrawing, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." So they take me down to the director's office, and I thought they're going to kick me out. And instead I was met with 2 very loving women who just said, "We're going to pray over you." And I was like, "You can do whatever you think will work." Because at this point I had tried everything and it wasn't working. And so they prayed over me, and God did it. It was a miraculous healing deliverance that took place. I was drenched in sweat when they were done praying. And it was as if God literally was just like, "You're done," and detoxed me from all the drugs and was just pulling it out of my body. And so, as great as that is, and it was a miracle, that's where the true work started. I had to learn how to do life and to deal with all my problems sober, and that was really hard. So it's a 6-month program, and they take you through like forgiving and healing from hurts and breaking soul ties and just living life and creating relationship with Christ. And so I had to do all that.
I liked how you interjected with the word soul ties. A lot of our listeners may not know what a soul tie is. And oftentimes in therapy, we call it trauma bonding as well. Right. And so, oftentimes we think, God's not real. God can't do that. But oftentimes when you think about recovery, that person has to have a willingness to recover.
Absolutely.
But Rachel, here's a question for you. There are some who go to recovery, do very well for 10 years, and then all of a sudden they're right back in the situation again. Do you fear that you would go back there again? Or what would you tell people to be aware of so that we don't slip back to where we came from?
Yeah, I think for many years in recovery, I definitely had that fear. Feel like I'm far enough along now that I don't really have that fear. And not to say, I do believe like there's an element of I have to be careful. Like I said earlier, I don't put myself around alcohol intentionally. I'm not going to go to a party where there's going to be drinking. I don't go places. You have to change your people, places, and things. That's what they tell you in recovery. I don't hang out with people who do drugs. I don't put myself in those positions. I very much make sure that I stay in healthy community and Christ-centered activities. I keep my boundaries up. And in moments of despair, depression, discouragement, because that still happens in recovery, I make sure I have those people that I can call. Like, "Hey, I'm doing really bad. I need you to pray for me. I need you to talk me through this." And just having like those accountability partners to make sure that I'm not off in left field somewhere.
So when you're in this recovery, a lot of times we work through self-acceptance, self-love, and being able to be more self-aware. Do you find that when people get into substance abuse, like you shared earlier, it's more about trying to find what makes you happy?
Yeah, but I think it's a sense of belonging.
Okay, so a sense of belonging. So here you are. Do you think that the recovery house that you were in gave you that sense of belonging that you were looking for?
For sure. It gave me all kinds of things. It gave me peace. It gave me joy. It gave me a sense of belonging because I'm in a home full of 20 other girls the same age as me. And it just provided me love from God, love from the women, love from the ladies there in the program. Like it just gave me everything that I was searching and gave me the opportunity to be in a safe, loving place to heal.
So Oklahoma has a high incarceration rate for women that are in substance abuse. Is your passion for them to try to help them out of those situations?
Yes, I do prison ministry. I've been doing that for about 10 years. I go into Eddie Warrior Correctional Facility, and I go in there and I just speak to them from a place of love and understanding, obviously, because I've been there, not necessarily in prison, but spiritually, and emotionally. And so I just go in there and I help bring the message of hope and healing and encouragement.
Now, wait a minute, Rachel. This is kind of contradictory. I mean, you grow up in a home that has Christian and you talk about religion versus relationship. You stop going, you get yourself into the depths of hell, so to speak. And wait a minute, you're doing ministry. What happened? What? I mean, some people just leave the church because it's so judgmental and they don't want to go back. And then some of the Christian messaging that comes out, it just seems judgmental. But here I'm hearing you say, I'm in the prison ministry to help. And so you're using terms like God and prayer and recovery. What was the change for you?
I think it was the love of God. The fact that he delivered me from the drugs in a minute, in an instant. You can't go through something like that and then deny the presence of God. And so in that 6 months in rehab, I learned, like I said earlier, relationship over religion. I started reading my Bible every day. God started speaking to me. I was praying every day. I was watching sermons and listening to podcasts and just growing and created a relationship just like you would a friend. I sat there and had conversations with him and he talked back and I would journal his voice and he just became so real to me. And the love of God, the peace of God, the joy of God, it all became so real to me. I couldn't deny his presence. I couldn't deny his realness. And so coming home, I knew that that's what was keeping me free. That's what was keeping me healed, was like my relationship with Christ. And so, of course, I came home and I got involved in a church and I started doing prison ministry because I just have such a heart to share God's goodness. He's the reason why I am where I'm at today.
So when you think about, I mean, God's taboo. We don't want to talk about him because it's so scary. And in therapy, we're taught not to talk about God as a father because of sexual trauma and things like that, because we think about our earthly fathers that have been traumatic or men who've been traumatic. And we talked about, here's the thing, that you're encountering all this. What made the difference between religion and just having a relationship? What's the difference?
Religion is a list of things you have to do because you have to do it. So I woke up, I read my Bible, check. I've spent 5 minutes with God, check. And you're not getting anything out of it. You're not changing. You're not bearing the fruit of a relationship. You're just going to church because it's what you're supposed to do. Versus relationship is, I know the voice of God. I have relationship with him. I spend time with him on a daily basis because I want to, because it feeds me, because I get something out of it, and because I love him and I know that he loves me. Like, understanding the love of the Father has changed everything for me.
I totally agree with what you're saying because, a long time ago, that's what I got myself into. I did broadcast journalism and radio. Then I was also doing associate minister, youth ministry type work. And one of the things that I try to tell youth ministers is that stop telling kids don't drink, don't do this, don't. Because if we don't explain about a relationship, kids, we're going to find out. Why did they say no? Okay, this is curious. And then we get ourselves hurt because we don't have that explanation. Since you made this turnaround in your life, which is fantastic, and here you are wanting to become a therapist so that you can have that passion, just like my situation with family and blended families. I admit I was selfish at times. There were things that I did that were hurtful, of yelling and things of that nature that didn't serve me well in the family. It came from a traumatic childhood experience. And so here I am. I was growing up in a legalistic type viewpoint of church, religion. I stopped going for a while. And then I realized that I can't allow anybody to stop me from having a relationship with God just because their behavior is such. I can't. So I did a turnaround. And because of my divorce from my kid's mom, it allowed me to see, oh my gosh, parental alienation syndrome, all this led me to lead a coalition to where Governor Keating signed into the effect the Equality Access Law in 2001, because I corresponded with him and residents in getting these laws changed to have equal rights for fathers. But that helped me in my spirituality to grow closer to God in such a way that builds that relationship. Since you made this change, and I know the changes in my life, I see a lot of things flourishing. And when I had cancer, I reached out to people that I've hurt and sent letters to them and emails to say, look, I apologize for the hurt that I've caused. I didn't know what I was doing, but you can heal and people can change. And that's the message. People can change. What influence today did that cause an influence in your parents?
Definitely my mother. Yes. When I was at the very end of the addiction, I saw that she was really digging into God. When I came home from rehab, my relationship with God was different. And so I was able to share that with her, and it's completely changed who she is today as well.
So here you are, you're thriving. I'm sure that your background got you into a situation to where I want to become a therapist to help. You're doing some coaching, and I understand you wrote a book.
I did, yes. I have this book. It's called Finding Freedom. This is my testimony in greater detail out of addiction. And each chapter is a different topic. So there's one on self-harm. There's one on sexual abuse. There's one on addiction. And at the end of each chapter, I actually have practical application for those, for loved ones that have ones that are addicted, and then for the addict as well. Like if you're struggling with this, here's prayers you can pray, here's steps you can take, here's like kind of some therapeutic options you can do. And so then I also have my workbook. This is called Unlocking Freedom. And this is great really for anybody. But it is, the first part is on creating relationship with Christ. So finding out who you are in him, who is he, reading the Bible, prayer. It's like deeper techniques and tools to create a deeper intimacy with Christ. The second part is more like inner healing. So learning to forgive, breaking soul ties, those kinds of things, journaling God's voice. And then the last part is connecting with others. And so that's like finding what are your giftings, what is your place in the church. And so it just really helps like heal from past hurts, grow in a relationship with Christ, and solidify your identity.
So are you using these tools for your prison ministry? Are women finding these tools useful?
Yes. So I actually use the workbook a lot. Going through with my clients, I use it as homework, and it's very, very helpful. And then I have this book in the prison. I have several copies in the prison. And so I constantly have girls tell me, I'm reading your book, and it brings so much encouragement for them.
What are you finding that here you go from a tragic life, you say, look, I got to turn my life around, and you have this Damascus moment. Now you've got a life where you are happy, you are serving the community, and at one point you said, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of men. Are you still afraid of men?
I think a little bit, maybe, but I've been through a lot of therapy in the last 10 years, and I've really worked on that, and I'm coming out of that. I've gotten a lot better, for sure.
Good. Because I mean, it is important for us to look at that. Yes, there is recovery. We don't have to stay in that darkness. That we don't have to live in fear. It's learning to take the steps of what we call boundaries. But I want to change that lingo in therapy, because boundaries is a line that cannot be crossed. And I like to think of, what is your threshold? I like to think about threshold because it's a door. It's how much are we going to allow in today or not allow? And every day changes that threshold. The key is not allowing so much in that is going to overwhelm you. So it's being aware where that threshold is for you so that it helps. And so here you are doing this recovery, you're doing this ministry. I mean, you're fixing to graduate. Mm-hmm. What is the future for you? Because what message would you give to those who are struggling today that you can give to them that gives them hope that they can overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say it's definitely possible to recover. It's possible to heal. It's possible to find freedom. I felt like I was at the deepest, darkest depths of hell. And I was using with people who are 50, 60 years old, shooting up. And I remember looking around and thinking, this is what my future holds. But praise God, it's not. It is possible to get help. You just have to find the right place to go, the right therapy, the right therapist, finding God, all the things. But you're absolutely capable of getting help.
And that's what Coach Soul is about. How to be a better you. Yeah. And it's not saying that, even just because you're better doesn't mean that you stop. You're still growing as a person. You're still learning. You're still adapting. And it's remarkable about hearing your story about where you came from, where you are now. And that's what I want to tell our listeners is that we tend to fear because of attachment issues that we've had growing up. And so it's not about fearing God. And we think, oh my God, God is going to zap us with lightning. He's full of hatred. I used to think that way because of the legalism that I don't see that. We are children of God. And I tell you, I live a life of peace. My anxiety and stress has alleviated to where my body has healed itself on a lot of different things. So, Rachel, I appreciate the time that you spent with us on Coach Soul. It's so great to hear how your recovery. I'm sure the books are found on Amazon.
Yes.
So we want to encourage you, if you're struggling with substance abuse, you want to find hope in what you can do as a family member that may have somebody or a friend that you may know. There is hope. And so until next time, take care and God bless. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on Coach Soul. As we wrap up, we want to remind our listeners of a few key points. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content shared here is based on professional opinion but may not apply to everyone's situation. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your mental health care. If you're in a crisis, please seek immediate professional help or contact a crisis hotline. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapist-client relationship. For personal advice, please consult with your licensed mental health professional in your area. Remember, your mental health journey is unique. While we hope this information is helpful, it is crucial to work directly with the qualified personnel for your specific needs. Thank you again for tuning in to Coach Soul, and we'll see you next time.